My name is Julia Simmons. I'm 36 years old. I'm a nurse and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. For much of my life, I thought I was a good person. I worked hard, I helped others, I tried to keep my head up. But deep down, I ignored something essential. My soul was thirsty until the day my heart stopped beating. Yes, I died. What I'm about to tell you isn't just a near-death experience. It's an urgent call that changed everything in me. There, between life and eternity, Jesus revealed to me something that shocked me, the true power of fasting, and how most of us are ignoring one of the greatest spiritual secrets ever delivered to humanity. What I saw, felt, and heard will challenge everything you think about the spirit world. If you've ever fasted, or never been able to understand why, it's so important. Get ready. It will move you. Like, comment, and share this message with those you love. Because what I've been shown can no longer be hidden. Before everything happened, I was leading a life that many would call stable. I worked as a nurse in long shifts at Cincinnati General Hospital, caring for patients, responding to emergencies, comforting families. On the outside, I was admired for my calm and empathy. Inside, a void grew. Faith has always been present, but in a far corner of my routine, I prayed when I had time. He went to church on some Sundays, fasting only out of obligation during Easter periods. Not by surrender, but by tradition. Fasting, for me, was hunger and headache. I thought that God only wanted our suffering, our momentary renunciation. I never understood the purpose. I never felt the power. But deep down, I knew something in me was dying spiritually. It was on a Monday that it all began. I felt exhausted, but it wasn't physical. It was an exhaustion of the soul. On that shift, after helping a patient in respiratory arrest, I felt a strong dizziness. Everything went dark, and when I opened my eyes, I was no longer here. The moment of death. The unexpected collapse and absolute silence. It was strange. At first, it just seemed like dizziness, like so many others we feel when we go too long without eating or sleep too little. But this one was different. It was as if my body was disconnecting from reality. I tried to ask for help, but my voice wouldn't come out. I felt my heart give one last impulse, like a stronger beat that echoed inside my chest. And then, silence. Deafening silence. There was no longer the sound of machines, nor heart monitors. The white lights of the hospital were blurred. Within seconds, I could no longer feel the weight of my body. It was as if an invisible layer had been removed from me, and then I saw it, my body, lying on the floor of the emergency room, nurses running, doctors reviving me. But I wasn't there anymore. I watched everything from above, as if it were floating. There was no pain. There was no fear. Just an intense awareness that I was no longer that flesh lying on the ground. There was a frightening peace, a feeling that I was being called, as if something or someone was attracting me with sweetness, but also with authority. And it was at that moment, in that eternal silence, that I felt a presence. A light began to form before me. It was not just any light. She was alive, breathed. And from that light, he emerged. Jesus. But this. I will tell you about this in the next chapter. Leaving the body. The strange peace and the vision of my own body. What impressed me most at that moment out of the body was not seeing my body fallen, but not to feel any panic. The peace was so deep, so enveloping, that it seemed impossible that I was dead. I felt no fear, no pain, no confusion. In fact, it was as if it finally made sense. I understood everything around me without needing words. It was as if my soul, loosed from the flesh, saw with a new vision, clearer, more complete, more true. I looked at myself, lying pale, with wires being connected, and hands pressing into my chest. I saw colleagues shouting my name, "Julia! Julia! Stay with me." But I couldn't answer, because I was already somewhere else. My body looked so frail, like an old garment that no longer fits. And it was at that moment, as I floated between the ceiling of the room and the threshold of eternity, that I realized something even more powerful. I was not alone. I felt a presence approaching with intensity. It was an energy that made everything around me vibrate, as if each particle recognized that being even before he appeared. When I finally looked at the source of that light, my eyes filled with tears, or whatever a soul sheds when it is deeply touched, because there he was, Jesus. His face was not exactly as we see in paintings or movies. It was much more alive. His gaze had love and authority at the same time. Eyes that knew me since before I was born. Eyes that saw every part of me, even the ones I hid from myself. And he, Shamu, calmed me a voice that was not heard with the ears, but with the spirit. Julia, daughter, come with me. I need to show you something. And then, everything changed. The encounter with Jesus. A presence that burned without hurting. His presence was like fire, but a fire that did not destroy. That it heated up without burning. It was as if I was being melted inside, but instead of pain, there was relief. A deep relief, as if I was finally home. Jesus stood before me. There was no doubt. The light that surrounded him was alive. Not an ordinary light, like that of the sun or a lamp. It was a light that breathed, that pulsated with love, truth, and glory. He didn't say many words at first. He just looked at me. But this look, it was as if he was looking not only at me, but through me. As if she saw every mistake, every thought, every lie I've ever told, every prayer I've muttered wearily, and yet she loved me with an intensity that crushed any shame. Jesus drew near. His cloak was white like no color I have ever seen on earth, and there was a softness in his presence that made me want to fall at his feet and never get up again. He reached out and touched the center of my being. Not my head, not my body, but my spirit. And then he spoke. His voice was not loud, but each word was like thunder of revelation. Daughter, there are things that the world has forgotten, and one of them is killing the spirits of many. I want to show you the weight that fasting has in heaven and how it has been despised on earth. At the time, I felt ashamed. I thought of all the times I fasted just for ritual, without purpose. He knew. I knew every time I looked at fasting as a physical sacrifice and not as a direct connection to him. And then he started showing me. Images began to emerge around us, as if we were in a place outside of time, where visions floated before us. People fasting sincerely, others mocking, churches ignoring, and the spiritual atmosphere changing according to their attitudes. But what he revealed next, that's what really shocked me. The shocking revelation. Jesus spoke about fasting with tears in his eyes. He looked at me seriously. His expression changed. It wasn't one of condemnation. It was one of pain. A deep pain, which came not from anger, but from wounded love. Jesus' eyes watered. Yes, tears streamed down the King of Glory's face. I trembled inside. How can you, the Savior, weep? He said. Fasting was a gift, a bridge, a secret that I gave to the hearts of my own, but it was forgotten, exchanged for empty rituals and diets disguised as sacrifice. As he spoke, I saw scenes of Christians doing automatic fasts, counting hours, but without prayer. People just starving, without intimacy, without brokenness. And then, Jesus showed me the spiritual world behind true fasting. It was as if fasting, when done with the right heart, released a light that rose like incense to the heavens. An invisible force broke through the darkness. Demons screamed and fled. Chains were falling. Hardened hearts began to weep. But when fasting was done for appearance or vanity, it was like black, heavy smoke that did not rise. It fell back on the faster. Jesus said, fasting does not change the Father. He changes the heart of man. At that moment, I felt a weight falling from my shoulders. I understood. I saw it. Fasting was the key to spiritual warfare, a tool for healing the soul, an alliance of intimacy with heaven. And we had trivialized. And he wiped a tear with his hand and said, "I'll show you what happens when someone fasts sincerely, and what happens when they mock that calling." And then, the visions began, the spiritual weight of fasting. What I saw when he showed the consequences, suddenly, we were somewhere else. It was as if Jesus had opened a window into the spirit world and let me see inside what happens when a person fasts. The first sight paralyzed me. I saw a young woman kneeling in a simple room with the lights off. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she didn't complain. His eyes were fixed on a verse in the Bible. Tears fell silently as she prayed, "Lord, I want more of you. Even if my flesh screams, my spirit desires you more." At that instant, a burst of light shot out of her chest. It was as if fasting had activated a beacon in the spiritual world. Angels approached, surrounding the place with flaming swords, and the surrounding environment changed. What was once oppressive darkness has become holy territory. Jesus explained, "To me, when one fasts with sincerity and humility, heaven moves. Not because of hunger, but because of the delivery." Then he showed me the opposite. A well-known religious leader fasted, but out of vanity, to show off, to feed his own ego. I saw him posting on social media, saying he was in the desert, with God, but in the spiritual world, there was no light at all. On the contrary, over him there was darkness, heavy shadows, and a hideous creature that fed on his arrogance. Yes, it was as if hell rejoiced in a false fast. Jesus whispered, "Not all fasting is worship. Some are vanity with a sacrificial mask." Then he showed me simple people, without study, without followers, without fame, but who fasted with purity. And each time they prayed during the fast, layers of darkness were being torn away from their families, their homes, their neighborhoods. It was like watching invisible wars being won with weapons that the world despises. And then Jesus told me something I'll never forget. Hell does not fear noisy believers. Fear those who fast in silence and pray in secret. There, I understood. Fasting is a hidden weapon, a spiritual bomb that many forgot to use, and he wasn't done. There was more to show me. People's visions, and their eternal destinies. Visions of people fasting, and of others who mocked it. Jesus led me to a place that looked like a judgment hall, but there were no thrones or hammers. There was absolute truth hanging in the air, and the visions began to unfold before us, as if time was bending over backwards to teach me. The first was from a simple man, a construction worker. His name was Raymond, lived in Newark, New Jersey, and fasted 3 times a week. Nobody knew, neither did his wife. During lunch, he would hide behind a container and pray silently with a dry loaf of bread in his pocket, which he never ate. When his vision appeared, the whole sky lit up. Jesus smiled. "He doesn't seek applause. He seeks my heart." And then Raymond appeared, being embraced by a crowd of angels. A harvest of souls was emerging behind him, people who had been saved because of the intercession of that man invisible to the world, but giant to heaven. Later, the image changed. I saw a young digital influencer, Angela, from Los Angeles. She said in her videos that she was soul fasting and used terms like spiritual detox. But in spirit, I saw that she was surrounded by mirrors, worshiping herself. Each photo published was an offering to one's own ego. And when he mocked traditional fasting, saying that this was a thing of the past, a radical believer's thing, a rift opened in the spiritual world. From it came a subtle darkness, which crept into the lives of his followers. People who stopped praying, that he thought fasting was a religious thing. It was like poison disguised as modern wisdom. Jesus looked on sadly. They exchanged the gold of the kingdom for the false brilliance of the world. Other visions came. A single mother fasting for her children, while heaven protected her house like a force field. A famous pastor who fasted for status, and whose prayers hit the ceiling. A teenager in Texas who fasted in secret, and his classmates began to convert one by one, not understanding why. And then Jesus said, "There are fasts that change generations, and others that feed only pride. It all depends on motivation. There, I understood. It's not about food. It's about surrender. It's about invisible war. It's about salvation. And it was then that he said, "Now you are going back, but you need to tell the world about it." My return, and the urgency to share what I learned with the world. Jesus looked into my eyes. His expression was one of urgency, but also of love. "It's not your time yet, Julia," he said, "but what you saw, it cannot be ignored. Teach, scream if you have to." Then I felt as if my spirit was pulled back. The light began to fade, little by little, as if a veil was being closed. Peace was still with me, but there was a weight of mission burning inside my soul. And then, shock, chest pain, a scream, human voices again. "She's coming back." Heart rate returning. I woke up. In the hospital's ICU. Tubes, machines, surprise doctors. They said that my heart had stopped for more than 4 minutes, that I got lucky. But I knew it wasn't luck, it was purpose. In the following days, as I recovered, that phrase of Jesus echoed in my mind like a spiritual siren. They have forgotten the value of fasting, and so many are falling. Since then, everything has changed. My faith was set on fire. My view of the world, of sin, of prayer, of spiritual warfare, everything has been turned upside down. And now I tell you, if you understood the seriousness of what has been revealed here, don't treat this as just another video. Start. Seek. Surrender. True fasting is a portal of revelation, liberation, and transformation. What Jesus showed me is not just for me, it is for everyone who still has ears to hear. If you feel like you're spiritually cold, if you feel that your house is being attacked, that your emotions are unstable, that your faith is weak, maybe it's time to fast. But not by diet, not out of obligation, by war, by communion, for Jesus. Because hell fears a soul in fasting and prayer. If this message touched your heart, share it so that more people will be blessed. Leave it in the comments if you've experienced something similar. Like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. The next experience may be even more profound. See you in the next testimony.